The cityscape outside Laura's window was a patchwork of shadows and light, the buildings rising like monoliths against the night sky. The hum of the city was a constant backdrop to her life, a reminder of the countless stories unfolding just beyond her reach. Inside her modest apartment, however, the narrative was one of quiet solitude, a space shared between her and her son Ethan, whose presence in her life had become both a comfort and a subtle source of tension. Laura lay in her bed, the sheets twisted around her slender frame, her mind refusing to surrender to sleep. The apartment was silent, save for the occasional creak of the old wooden beams as they adjusted to the cooling air. She told herself that her restlessness was due to the heat, the oppressive summer weather that seemed to seep into every corner of the city, but deep down she knew that her insomnia was rooted in something far more complex. Ethan had been distant lately, his usual easy smile replaced by a thoughtful, almost brooding expression. His return home after college had been a welcome development at first, a chance for them to reconnect and adjust to their new dynamic as adults, but as the weeks turned into months, Laura found herself grappling with a sense of isolation she hadn't expected. Her son was growing away from her, carving out a life that was his alone, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing him to the vast, unknowable world beyond their front door. It was this sense of disconnection that drove her from her bed in the early hours of the morning. She needed to see him, to reassure herself that the bond they shared was still intact, even if it was frayed at the edges. She padded softly down the hallway, her bare feet making barely a sound on the worn carpet. The door to Ethan's room was slightly ajar, a thin strip of light casting a golden glow into the otherwise dark corridor. Laura hesitated, her hand hovering in the air, caught between the instinct to protect and the understanding that her son was entitled to his privacy. But the silence was suffocating, and she yearned to break through the barrier that seemed to have sprung up between them. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to her own ears. She nudged the door open a fraction more, her heart pounding in her chest as she peered into the room. The sight that greeted her was both jarring and strangely mesmerizing. Ethan was seated on the edge of his bed, his posture rigid, his attention riveted to the laptop screen before him. The room was bathed in a flickering glow, the sounds of passionate moaning and the rhythmic slapping of skin on skin filling the air. Laura's eyes widened in shock as she took in the scene, her gaze inexorably drawn to the explicit display unfolding on the computer. She should have turned away, should have retreated to the sanctuary of her own room and pretended that she had seen nothing, but some unseen force rooted her to the spot, her eyes locked on the figures writhing on the screen, their bodies moving in a primal dance of desire and release. Laura's gaze drifted to Ethan, and she noticed for the first time the subtle movements of his hands. They were hidden from view, tucked beneath the fabric of his sweatpants, moving with a rhythm that matched the actions of the actors on the screen. The realization of what he was doing sent a jolt of electricity through her, a mix of maternal concern and a more troubling, forbidden curiosity. The sound of the laptop snapping shut shattered the silence, and Laura's attention snapped back to her son. Ethan spun around, his eyes wide with shock and embarrassment, the color draining from his face as he realized he had been caught in such a compromising position. "Mom, His voice was a strangled whisper, his mind clearly racing to find an appropriate response to the situation. "I'm sorry, Ethan," Laura stammered, her own cheeks flushed with heat. "I didn't mean to intrude. I wanted to check on you." The words hung heavy in the air between them, a tacit acknowledgement of the boundary they had both crossed. Ethan's expression softened slightly, relief mingling with residual embarrassment as he realized that his mother would not demand answers or reprimand him for his private actions. "It's okay, Mom," he said, his voice steadier now. "I should have been more careful. I'm sorry you had to see that." Laura nodded, offering him a weak smile as she backed out of the room, pulling the door shut behind her. But as she made her way back to her own bed, the images from the laptop screen refused to fade, replaying themselves in her mind's eye with unsettling clarity. The days that followed were fraught with an awkwardness that neither Laura nor Ethan could seem to dispel. They danced around each other, their conversations stilted and punctuated by long, uncomfortable silences. Laura found herself watching her son with new eyes, noting the way his gaze occasionally darted to her and then quickly away, as if he were afraid of what she might see. She began to pay more attention to her appearance, choosing outfits that highlighted her figure, her actions driven by an impulse she could neither understand nor control. She laughed at his jokes, made sure to touch him, a hand on his shoulder, a playful shove as they passed in the hallway, and found herself seeking out reasons to be near him, to breathe in the scent of his cologne and feel the warmth of his body. One evening, as Laura was preparing dinner, she glanced over at Ethan, who was sitting at the kitchen table, ostensibly studying on his laptop. She noticed his hand straying to the hem of his t-shirt, his fingers toying with the fabric, tracing small, absent-minded circles on his abdomen. The movement was innocent enough, but it sent a ripple of awareness through her, a reminder of the hidden facets of her son's adult life. Later that night, after Ethan had retreated to his room and the apartment had settled into its usual nocturnal hush, Laura found herself standing outside his door once again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She turned the handle and slipped inside, her heart pounding in her chest as she approached the laptop sitting on his desk. With trembling fingers, she opened the browser and navigated to the history page, her eyes scanning the list of websites he had visited. The titles of the videos were explicit and varied, a testament to the breadth of Ethan's sexual curiosity. Laura felt a hot flush of shame and arousal as she read them, her mind conjuring up vivid images that both shocked and intrigued her. She clicked on a link, her breath hitching as the video loaded on the screen. The actors were attractive and uninhibited, their bodies moving with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and deeply erotic. Laura told herself that she was only doing this to understand her son better, to find a way to connect with him on some level that transcended their faltering mother-son dynamic. But as she watched the scenes unfold, she couldn't deny the stirring of her own long-suppressed desires, the slow burn of an attraction she had never anticipated feeling for her own child. Closing the laptop with a snap, Laura stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. What was she thinking? This was madness, a path that led to darkness and destruction. She fled from Ethan's room, the echo of the closing door a stark reminder of the line she had so nearly crossed. As she lay in her bed, staring up at the ceiling, Laura knew that she was teetering on the brink of a precipice. The knowledge of what she had done, and what she had so narrowly avoided doing, weighed heavily on her conscience. She was playing with fire, and she knew that it was only a matter of time before she got burned. But even as these thoughts swirled through her mind, she couldn't shake the memory of Ethan's hand moving beneath his t-shirt, the shadowy outline of his form as he sat, lost in his own private world of fantasy and desire. And as sleep finally claimed her, she clung to the hope that somehow, they would find their way back to solid ground, a place where the bonds of family and the dictates of forbidden longing could exist in harmony without tearing their world apart. Days turned into weeks, and the apartment became a stage for a play of silent glances and unspoken desires. Laura moved through her routines with a sense of detachment, her mind continually drifting back to the night she had invaded Ethan's privacy and the Pandora's box of emotions it had unleashed within her. She found herself watching him with newfound intensity, her gaze lingering on the contours of his body, the strength of his hands, the way his hair curled at the nape of his neck. Ethan, for his part, seemed to be grappling with his own set of conflicting emotions. He was polite and engaging during their shared meals and the occasional movie night, but there was a weariness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. It was as if he, too, was acutely aware of the shifting dynamics between them, though he likely attributed it to the usual growing pains of a young adult striving for independence. Laura's internal struggle reached a fever pitch one sweltering afternoon as she returned home from a grueling day at work. The apartment was unusually quiet, the stillness amplified by the oppressive heat that seemed to cling to the walls. She dropped her keys on the counter and kicked off her shoes, her body aching for the cool refuge of her bedroom. As she passed by Ethan's room, she noticed that the door was slightly ajar. She told herself to keep walking, to respect his privacy, but curiosity, or perhaps something darker, propelled her forward. She peered through the gap, her heart lurching in her chest at the sight that greeted her. Ethan was lying on his bed, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow and rhythmic. One hand was tucked beneath his pillow, while the other rested low on his abdomen, his fingers moving with a slow, deliberate motion beneath the waistband of his shorts. Laura's breath caught in her throat as she realized what he was doing. Ethan was touching himself, his body lost in the throes of self-induced pleasure. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her, shame for intruding on such an intimate moment, fear at the realization of how easily she could become addicted to these illicit glimpses into her son's private life, and, most disturbingly of all, an undeniable surge of arousal that left her feeling shaken and guilty. She backed away silently, retreating to the sanctuary of her room, where she could process the enormity of what she had just seen. Lying on her bed, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth that had been simmering beneath the surface of her consciousness for weeks now. Her feelings for Ethan were no longer purely maternal. They had morphed into something complex and forbidden, a tangle of emotional and sexual desire that she could neither justify nor ignore. Laura spent the remainder of the day in a daze, her interactions with Ethan tinged with a new layer of self-awareness. She was hyper-conscious of every word she spoke, every gesture she made, terrified that he might somehow discern the tumultuous thoughts racing through her mind. As evening approached, Laura found herself standing in front of her closet, her fingers drifting over the various items of clothing that hung within. She selected a short, flowing skirt and a low-cut tank top, her choices guided by an impulse that she was no longer willing to suppress. She examined her reflection in the mirror, her heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and anticipation. She looked good, sexy, even, and the knowledge of this filled her with a sense of power and vulnerability. Dinner that night was a quiet affair, the tension between Laura and Ethan palpable. She caught him stealing glances at her exposed legs, the fabric of her skirt riding up as she moved, and she couldn't help but feel a thrill of satisfaction at his obvious discomfort. She laughed at his attempts at humor, her eyes lingering on his mouth as he spoke, imagining what it would be like to feel those lips against her own. After dinner, they settled in the living room to watch a movie, the distance between them on the couch far less than it should have been. Laura could feel the heat radiating from Ethan's body, and she found herself inching closer, her skin tingling with the anticipation of contact. When the movie ended, they sat in silence, the only sound the low hum of the air conditioner and the distant murmur of the city outside. Laura turned to face Ethan, her eyes searching his for some sign of reciprocation, some indication that he, too, felt the pull of this dangerous attraction. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you about something. Something important." He looked at her, his expression one of concern and confusion, and nodded for her to continue. Laura took a deep breath, her mind racing as she struggled to find the words to express the chaos of her emotions. "These past few weeks, ever since that night, I've been feeling things that I don't quite understand. Things that scare me a little." She paused, gauging his reaction, but his face remained impassive, his gaze steady on hers. "I think about you differently now, and I don't know if I even want to stop it. I don't know if, despite everything, this is something we both need." The silence that followed was deafening, the air between them charged with an electric tension that seemed to crackle and hum. Laura held her breath, waiting for Ethan to respond, to say something, anything, that might clarify his own feelings on the matter. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Mom, I don't know what to say. This is a lot to take in." Laura nodded, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. I know, baby. I know it is. But we can't ignore this. We can't pretend that there isn't something happening between us. Ethan looked down at his hands, his fingers twisting together in his lap. When he finally lifted his gaze to meet hers, there was a determination in his eyes that Laura hadn't seen before. I care about you, Mom, more than anything. But this, it's wrong. It's not what a son should feel for his mother. Laura reached out, her hand covering his, her touch gentle but insistent. But what if it feels right, Ethan? What if, despite everything, this is something we both need? The room seemed to hold its breath as they sat there, locked in a moment of profound connection and confusion. Laura knew that they were teetering on the edge of a decision that could alter the course of their lives forever, and she also knew that, whatever happened next, there would be no going back. As the night wore on, the barriers between Laura and Ethan slowly began to crumble, each word, each touch drawing them further into the forbidden territory of their desires. And when Ethan finally leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a tentative, exploratory kiss, Laura knew that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. In the days and weeks that followed, they would grapple with the consequences of their actions, struggling to reconcile the love they shared as family with the passionate, intimate connection that was growing between them. It was a journey fraught with risk and the potential for heartbreak, but in that moment, as they gave in to the irresistible pull of their emotions, none of that mattered. They were united by a bond that was as beautiful as it was tragic, a testament to the enduring power of human desire, no matter how complicated or unexpected its form. The apartment, once a place of comfort and routine, had become a battleground of unspoken desires and stifling silence. The air was thick with tension, a palpable force that seemed to grow more oppressive with each passing hour. Laura knew that this could not continue. The strain between her and Ethan was becoming unbearable, a chasm that threatened to swallow their relationship whole. It was time to address the elephant in the room, to confront the feelings that had been bubbling beneath the surface of their shared existence. She found Ethan in the living room, his attention fixed on a book in his lap. He looked up as she entered, his hazel eyes guarded, his posture rigid. Laura took a deep breath, steadying herself as she took a seat across from him. Ethan, we need to talk, she began, her voice carrying a quiet urgency that could not be ignored. This tension between us, it's tearing me apart. We can't go on like this. Ethan closed his book and set it aside, his expression unreadable. I know, Mom. I've been feeling it too. But I don't know what you expect us to do about it. Laura leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I expect us to be honest with each other, to acknowledge what's happening and figure out how to move forward. The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult and emotionally charged either of them had ever experienced. Words tumbled out in a torrent of raw honesty as they each laid bare their fears, their insecurities, and the confusing tangle of emotions that had arisen since that fateful night. Laura spoke of her loneliness, the void she had felt ever since her husband, Ethan's father, had left them. She confessed to the longing for affection that had grown within her, a longing that had somehow become intertwined with the image of her adult son. Ethan listened, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He tried to articulate his own feelings, his struggle to reconcile the image of his mother with the stirrings of a primal, forbidden attraction that left him feeling guilty and conflicted. As they argued and shared their feelings, something within Laura shifted. The floodgates of her pent-up desires had been opened, and she found herself embracing the sexuality that she had denied for so long. She had been a mother, a nurturer, a caretaker, but she was also a woman with needs and desires that demanded to be acknowledged. In the days that followed, Laura began to express her newfound sense of self through her clothing and demeanor. She wore outfits that highlighted her femininity, choosing pieces that she had once deemed too bold or revealing, mini skirts that clung to her curves, short tops that exposed a sliver of her midriff, and, On some days, she forewent a bra altogether, the faint outline of her nipples visible through the fabric of her blouse. The change in her attire did not go unnoticed by Ethan. He found himself unable to tear his gaze away from her, the magnetic pull of her presence causing a knot of tension to form in the pit of his stomach. The atmosphere within the apartment grew heavy with an electric charge, each casual touch and lingering glance adding fuel to the fire that threatened to consume them both. Laura was acutely aware of the effect she was having on her son, and she reveled in the sense of power it gave her. She found herself seeking out opportunities to brush against him, her movements deliberate and calculated as she navigated the apartment's tight spaces. The feel of his body against hers, even in passing, sent ripples of excitement coursing through her veins, igniting a need within her that she could no longer ignore. The tension between them reached a fever pitch one evening as they prepared dinner together in the kitchen. Laura had bent down to retrieve a pot from a lower cabinet, her short skirt riding up to reveal the lacy edge of her underwear. She straightened up slowly, her heart pounding in her chest as she caught sight of Ethan's reflection in the stainless steel appliances. His eyes were fixed on her, his expression one of barely contained desire. Their eyes met in the reflection, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Laura turned to face him, her lips parted, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She took a step toward him, her body moving of its own accord, driven by a force that was beyond her control. Ethan's gaze dropped to her lips, then back up to her eyes, a silent question hanging in the air between them. Laura closed the distance, her hand reaching up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion, "I can't fight this anymore. I don't want to fight it." The words hung there, a declaration of her intentions, a surrender to the desires that had been building within her for weeks. She saw the conflict raging in his eyes, the battle between his love for her and the taboo nature of their attraction. In the end, it was the love they shared for each other that tipped the scales, the love that had been their guiding light through all the trials and tribulations of their shared past. It was a love that transcended societal norms and moral judgments, a love that was fierce and unyielding in its intensity. With a low groan, Ethan gave in to the temptation that had been tormenting him. His arms encircled her waist, pulling her close as his lips claimed hers in a kiss that was both a homecoming and a departure from everything they had once known to be true. They stumbled blindly out of the kitchen, their bodies moving in unison as they made their way to Laura's bedroom. The door closed behind them with a soft click, shutting out the world and all its complications. Inside, they were simply a man and a woman, united by a connection that was as beautiful as it was profoundly taboo. As they undressed each other, their movements were slow and deliberate, each touch a silent vow of the pleasure and the heartache that was to come. They explored each other's bodies with a reverence that bordered on worship, their actions a testament to the depth of their emotional and physical bond. And when they finally came together in an act of love that was both beautiful and profoundly taboo, they did so with the knowledge that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. They had chosen to embrace the complexity of their relationship, to navigate the treacherous waters of their shared desires, and to face the consequences of their choices together as a family. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined in Laura's bed, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. They spoke in hushed tones of the future, of the challenges they would undoubtedly face as they navigated this unconventional path they had chosen. But through it all, they clung to the belief that their love, unorthodox as it might be, was worth fighting for, worth the risk of scandal and censure. The morning light spilled across the bedroom floor, painting the room in hues of soft gold and warm amber. Laura stirred, a gentle stretch of her limbs disrupting the peaceful slumber that had claimed her in the early hours of the dawn. Beside her, Ethan lay sleeping, his breath steady and even, the rise and fall of his chest a comforting rhythm that mingled with the quiet stillness of the apartment. Laura allowed herself a moment to simply watch him, her heart swelling with a mixture of love, gratitude, and a lingering sense of awe at the journey they had embarked upon together. Their relationship had traversed uncharted territories, challenging societal norms and reshaping the contours of their shared existence. As Ethan began to stir, his eyelids fluttering open to reveal the sleepy warmth of his hazel eyes, a small, knowing smile graced Laura's lips. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice soft and husky with the remnants of sleep. "Morning," Ethan replied, his voice rough with the new day. He turned to face her, his gaze softening as it met hers. "Last night, it was incredible." Laura nodded, her own gaze never wavering from his. "It was. Every time with you is like a discovery, a reminder of why we've chosen this path together." They rose together, their movements fluid and in sync, as if they were two parts of a single whole. Laura led the way to her bedroom, the anticipation of what was to come sending shivers of excitement down her spine. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing them off from the outside world and all its complications. In the privacy of their sanctuary, they undressed each other with a reverence that belied the feverish need that simmered just beneath the surface. Laura's hands skimmed over the contours of Ethan's chest, her touch light and teasing, while Ethan traced the delicate lines of her collarbone, his fingers leaving a trail of heat in their wake. They came together in a dance as old as time, their bodies moving with a grace and precision born of countless shared experiences. Each caress, each whispered endearment, was a testament to the depth of their feelings for one another, a celebration of the love they had dared to acknowledge and claim as their own. As they reached the pinnacle of their shared passion, the world around them seemed to fall away, leaving nothing but the two of them, bound together by an intimacy that went beyond the physical realm. It was a connection that was at once beautiful and bittersweet, a reminder of the delicate balance they had struck between societal expectations and the undeniable truth of their hearts. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined amidst the tangled sheets, the soft cadence of their mingled breaths was the only sound that broke the silence of the room. Laura rested her head on Ethan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, a symbol of the life they had chosen to share despite the risks and the potential for heartbreak. Their love was a complex tapestry, woven from threads of desire, familial affection, and an unwavering commitment to each other's happiness and well-being. It was a love that challenged the status quo and defied easy categorization, a love that demanded both courage and a willingness to embrace the unknown. As they drifted off to sleep, each lost in their own thoughts, they knew that the future held no guarantees. They understood that their journey together would be fraught with obstacles, both external and internal. But they also knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a united front, their love a beacon of hope that would guide them through the darkest of times. In the quiet hours before dawn, Laura and Ethan reaffirmed their commitment to each other and to the life they were building together. They whispered promises in the dark, vowing to stand by one another, to cherish the love they shared, and to navigate the complexities of their unique and unconditional love. Their story was not one for the faint of heart, a narrative marked by courage, resilience, and the unyielding pursuit of happiness in the face of adversity. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, to transform, to heal, and to endure against all odds. And as the first light of day crept through the blinds, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the room, Laura and Ethan held each other close, secure in the knowledge that their love, however unconventional, was a force powerful enough to transcend any obstacle that might stand in its way. They had chosen each other, not in defiance of their shared past, but as a testament to the enduring strength of the bonds that unite us against all odds. In the wake of their profound and life-altering decision, Laura and Ethan grappled with the complexities of their new normal. The early days following their intimate encounter were a delicate dance of emotions, moments of intense connection interspersed with periods of doubt and introspection. They were acutely aware of the precarious nature of their situation, and the need to establish boundaries and expectations became paramount. Laura, ever the protective mother, was the first to voice the necessity of discretion and caution. "We have to be careful, Ethan," she said one morning over coffee, her eyes searching his for understanding. What we share, it's something that society won't accept easily. We can't let our guard down. Ethan nodded, the weight of their secret casting a shadow across his features. I know, Mom. I don't want to cause any trouble for you, for either of us. We'll figure out a way to make this work without risking too much exposure. They agreed to maintain the appearance of a typical mother-son relationship whenever they were in public or around friends and family. It was a difficult adjustment, learning to suppress the visible signs of their deeper bond, but they both understood the importance of keeping up pretenses to avoid the scrutiny and judgment of others. As the weeks passed, Laura and Ethan found themselves settling into a routine that allowed them to explore their new connection while still preserving a sense of normalcy in their daily lives. Laura continued to throw herself into her work, taking on additional projects to keep her mind occupied during the hours she and Ethan were apart. Ethan, meanwhile, focused on his job search and pursuing hobbies and interests that would occasionally take him out of the apartment, providing them both with much-needed space. The time they spent together in the evenings and on weekends was precious, a sanctuary from the outside world. They cooked meals together, shared bottles of wine as they talked about everything and nothing, and indulged in the simple pleasure of each other's company. There was an ease and a comfort between them that had grown out of their shared history and deep emotional connection, coupled with the undeniable electricity that now crackled beneath the surface of their interactions. Laura found herself taking extra care with her appearance, eager to evoke the same response from Ethan that she had seen in his eyes that first night they had given in to their desires. She experimented with new makeup looks, styled her hair in ways that accentuated its natural waves, and chose outfits that were both elegant and subtly seductive. The subtle shifts in her self-presentation served as silent signals of her availability and her willingness to continue down the path they had started on together. Ethan, for his part, seemed to flourish under the attention and affection that Laura lavished upon him. He was more confident, more sure of himself than she had ever seen him, and the change in his demeanor was nothing short of remarkable. The dynamic between them had shifted in subtle yet profound ways, with Laura often finding herself looking to Ethan for guidance and support, much as a partner would in a traditional relationship. Their physical relationship continued to evolve, each encounter a journey of discovery and mutual satisfaction. They learned each other's bodies, the sensitive spots that elicited gasps of pleasure, the rhythm and pace that brought them both to the brink of ecstasy and beyond. The intimacy they shared was a source of both joy and a lingering sense of guilt, a paradox that they were still learning to navigate. Communication became their cornerstone, a tool they used to address the myriad of emotions that their unconventional relationship brought to the forefront. They spoke candidly about their feelings, their fears, and the future, determined to face any challenges head-on together. We can't predict what will happen tomorrow, next month, or next year, Laura said during one of their heart-to-heart conversations, but as long as we're honest with each other and prioritize our relationship, I believe we can overcome anything that comes our way. Ethan reached out, his hand covering hers in a gesture of solidarity and affection. I agree, Mom. We've already defied so many odds. I have faith in us, in what we've built, and where we're going. They knew that their journey was far from over, that the road ahead would be fraught with obstacles and potential pitfalls. But they also knew that they had something special, a bond that transcended the ordinary and mundane. They had forged a connection that was as beautiful as it was complex, a testament to the depth of their emotional and physical bond. As they moved forward, they did so with a shared understanding that the barriers they had once erected between their personal lives and their shared desires had begun to erode. They discovered that it was possible to maintain the integrity of their familial bond while also embracing the passion and intimacy that they had once believed to be forbidden. They continued to cherish the small, everyday moments, shared laughter over a meal, the quiet comfort of sitting together in silence, the gentle teasing and inside jokes that only they understood. These were the building blocks of their relationship, the foundation upon which their unconventional love was built and sustained. In the days that followed, Laura and Ethan found themselves standing at a crossroads, their lives irrevocably altered by the decisions they had made and the paths they had chosen to explore together. Despite the uncertainties that lay ahead, they held on to each other with a fierce conviction, their love a guiding light in the otherwise tumultuous sea of their existence. Through conversations whispered in the dark and afternoons spent lost in each other's embrace, they carved out a space for themselves in a world that seemed determined to keep them apart. They knew that their relationship would continue to provoke questions and stir controversies, inviting the scrutiny of those who could not comprehend the true nature of what lay between them. Yet none of this diminished the depth of their commitment, nor dampened the burning intensity of their desire. Instead, these challenges became the catalyst for a deeper level of understanding, a shared resolve to stand united against whatever trials they might face. As they navigated the complexities of their unique bond, Laura and Ethan learned to celebrate the joy that came with their union while also acknowledging the sacrifices that such a partnership demanded. They spoke openly about the future, allowing themselves to dream of a life where love and acceptance prevailed over prejudice and fear. And as they lay together in the sanctuary of Laura's bedroom, the soft glow of the bedside lamp casting a warm radiance over their entwined forms, they whispered promises of devotion and perseverance, their hearts beating in unison as they faced the dawn of a new day, a day that promised further opportunities to strengthen their extraordinary alliance and to affirm the enduring power of their unprecedented love. In the muted light of dawn, as the city outside began to stir from its slumber, Laura and Ethan lay nestled in the haven of Laura's bedroom, their limbs entwined and hearts beating in syncopated harmony. The events of the previous night still lingered in the air, a potent mixture of vulnerability, passion, and the undeniable thrill of having crossed a boundary that society deemed insurmountable. Yet here they were, proof that love could flourish in even the most unlikely of circumstances. As Laura traced idle patterns on the smooth skin of Ethan's chest, she marveled at the serene expression on his face, a stark contrast to the turmoil of emotions that had consumed them just hours before. In the stillness of the morning, doubts began to gnaw at the edges of her consciousness, questions about societal norms, the sanctity of family bonds, and whether they had irrevocably compromised something sacred in their quest for fulfillment. Sensing her unease, Ethan turned to meet her gaze, his voice a low rumble that resonated with sincerity. "We'll figure this out, Mom. We've faced tough times before, and we'll get through this together, stronger and closer than ever." Laura offered him a tentative smile, grateful for his reassurance even as her mind buzzed with the enormity of their situation. Together, they had embarked upon a path littered with potential landmines, each step forward requiring courage, discretion, and an unwavering belief in the sanctity of their bond, a bond that transcended societal labels and defied conventional wisdom. Over the weeks that followed, Laura and Ethan established a delicate balance within the confines of their apartment, a sanctuary where they could explore the depths of their connection without fear of judgment or reprisal. Their day-to-day interactions remained grounded in the familiar patterns of familial affection, but in the privacy of their shared space, a different kind of intimacy blossomed. Night after night, they indulged in the sheer ecstasy of physical exploration, each touch imbued with a profound understanding of the other's heart, mind, and soul. Conversely, the outside world demanded a carefully curated facade, one that concealed the true extent of their evolving partnership. At work and within their circle of friends, Laura projected an image of composed independence, the devoted single mother whose primary concern was her son's successful transition into adulthood. Meanwhile, Ethan balanced his time between job hunting and cultivating friendships that belied the deeper yearnings he kept hidden beneath a veneer of casual nonchalance. The duality of their existence, the public persona versus the private reality, became a dance of subtlety and restraint. They communicated through meaningful glances and coded phrases, their shared laughter often laced with an underlying significance that only they could grasp. And though the strain of maintaining such a charade occasionally took its toll, manifesting as moments of profound isolation for Laura or bouts of introspective melancholy for Ethan, these challenges only served to reinforce their commitment to one another. As they adapted to their new reality, Laura and Ethan discovered that their relationship required constant negotiation and redefinition. They established ground rules designed to safeguard the integrity of their connection while also acknowledging the inherent risks of their unorthodox union. Open communication became their guiding principle. Candid discussions about boundaries, expectations, and potential triggers helped them navigate the complexities of their dynamic with grace and compassion. It wasn't long before the outside world began to exert pressure on the fragile ecosystem they had so carefully constructed. Well-intentioned family members probed Ethan about his social life and romantic interests, casting him in the role of the eligible young bachelor poised for a future ripe with limitless possibilities. Laura, meanwhile, fielded thinly veiled suggestions from friends that perhaps it was time to consider dating again, to reclaim a portion of her identity that had been dormant since becoming a widow. These external influences threatened to destabilize the delicate equilibrium that Laura and Ethan had achieved, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about the longevity and sustainability of their union. Were they merely indulging in a fleeting taboo, or had they stumbled upon something truly enduring, a love capable of withstanding the harsh glare of public scrutiny? In moments of doubt, Laura sought solace in the quiet moments they shared away from prying eyes, stolen kisses in the kitchen, the comforting weight of Ethan's arm draped across her shoulders as they watched television, and the tender way he would brush an errant strand of hair from her face. These small acts of affection bolstered her spirits, reminding her that their connection extended far beyond the realms of physical desire. For his part, Ethan grappled with the responsibility that came with being the protector of their shared secret. He watched his mother closely, ready to provide support and reassurance whenever her resolve appeared to waver. In his eyes, Laura witnessed a maturity and depth of character that surpassed his years, confirming her belief that their love was far from superficial. It was rooted in mutual respect and an intuitive understanding of each other's innermost needs. Despite the complexities of navigating their intimate relationship within the confines of their familial bond, Laura and Ethan continued to grow, both individually and as a unit. Their conversations delved into topics ranging from personal aspirations and philosophical musings to the logistics of managing a dual existence that required constant vigilance. Over glasses of wine or during leisurely walks in the park, they exchanged hopes and fears, weaving a tapestry of shared experiences that fortified their connection. It was during these moments of reflection that Laura came to appreciate the profound transformation that had occurred within her. Motherhood had imbued her with strength, patience, and resilience, yet her evolving relationship with Ethan unlocked facets of her personality that had long remained dormant. She felt alive in ways she never thought possible, her spirit buoyed by the exhilarating rush of newfound passion combined with the comforting certainty of unconditional love. Similarly, Ethan discovered new dimensions of himself through his interactions with Laura. He learned the importance of sensitivity and emotional intelligence, recognizing that true intimacy extended beyond mere physical gratification. His respect for his mother deepened as he witnessed her vulnerabilities and honored her trust in him to navigate their unconventional partnership with dignity and care. As spring gradually yielded to the warmth of summer, Laura and Ethan found themselves reflecting on the journey they had undertaken thus far. They acknowledged the precarious nature of their arrangement, recognizing that the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Yet they also celebrated the milestones they had achieved. Each hurdle overcome was a testament to the fortitude of their bond and the legitimacy of their union. Their love had evolved into a multifaceted entity, complex, nuanced, and resistant to simplistic categorization. It was a source of incredible joy and, at times, profound sorrow, as they contemplated the sacrifices demanded by their chosen path. Together, they grieved the loss of normalcy, accepting that their lives would forever be colored by the decisions they had made. But within that acceptance lay a sense of liberation. They were no longer prisoners to societal expectations, free instead to define their relationship on their own terms. In quiet moments of introspection, Laura occasionally allowed herself to imagine a life unfettered by the constraints of their current reality, a life where she and Ethan could live openly without fear of censure or ostracism. While such fantasies provided temporary respite from the pressures of their situation, she knew that the true measure of their success hinged on their ability to navigate the present while planning for a future that accommodated both their private happiness and public responsibilities. Their love affair was a delicate ballet, each movement carefully choreographed to avoid disrupting the intricate balance they had achieved. As they danced along the razor's edge of propriety and desire, Laura and Ethan held fast to the belief that their journey, no matter how fraught with obstacles, was worth every risk, every moment of doubt, and every sacrifice made along the way. Through whispered confessions in the dead of night and tender affirmations offered in the soft glow of sunrise, they affirmed their devotion to one another, promising to weather whatever storms lay ahead with grace, dignity, and an abiding faith in the power of their extraordinary love. With hearts entwined and souls united, Laura and Ethan ventured forth into the unknown, determined to chart a course toward a horizon brimming with hope, understanding, and the promise of endless tomorrows.